what made it special about the Boy Scouts, Scouting of America now, the merit badge model, was there were choice, student choice. You didn't have to do this, this, and this. You had choice of 5 different ways to learn this. It was hands-on. It often involved going out to the community and meeting people in the field, mentorship related type of experiences. And then there was an opportunity to demonstrate that you learned, that there was competence. You walk away from that and you have to show how you learned, writing, speaking. So in terms of responding to current events, real world events, you can look at the curriculum and say, yes, there's math, there's reading and writing integrated in current events and learning about the cultures, so much that we don't know about from everyday news cycles.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Dan, if you want to jump in here.
Only that I think the other piece of the Ryan Deasy's self-determination theory research is that if we strive to meet student and teacher psychological needs in terms of autonomy, which means that they have not only voice but choice in terms of how they're dealing with things and what they're dealing with, if they focus on relationships in terms of building a close relationship between teacher and student and student and student, if they build that into the curriculum in terms of the pedagogical strategies that they use, and if they focus on competence in terms of not only my competence as a teacher meeting student psychological needs as well as academic goals, but also the students in terms of them creating these skills that they will now have to deal with real-world problems. If we can integrate that into what we're teaching and how we're teaching, it's like a different mindset now we're talking about for teachers, to not dismiss a student suggestion that, can we talk about what's happening in Iran today? Because I'm really concerned about what might happen here, or about my friend who happens to be from Iran, whether or not he's going to, be kicked out of the country, deported, whatever. I think we ought, we need to give students that opportunity. If we do that, not only will teachers be happier, but students will be happier too. It's like a synergistic operation that goes on here. And the other benefit for this is, right now we have a tremendous teacher shortage. Mm-hmm. I wonder what would happen if teacher candidates, people who were thinking about coming into the profession, said, wow, there's really now an opportunity for me to be creative and have a different type of impact on kids because of not only what I'm teaching, but how I'm teaching.
After we take this only break, I've got some email feedback for our guests. It's connections@wxxi.org. And we've got feedback from all kinds of the spectrum on standardized testing here. Dan Drmacich and Ed Donnelly are with us, and they are joining us from the Rochester Coalition for Public Education, among many other sort of long and storied parts of their own resumes. Both of them teachers. Dan was a principal of School Without Walls. And I can't do their whole resumes again. We don't have time. But next week, they would love for you on Wednesday to be part of a virtual event. They're bringing in 5 distinguished people in the field of education and education research. And it's an event on the subject of high-stakes standardized testing. That is next Wednesday starting at 7 p.m. We'll have a link in our show notes if you want to attend virtually. We'll come right back to your feedback on the other side here.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Bob Johnson Auto Group, believing an informed public makes for a stronger community. Proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson, focused on the news, issues, and trends that shape the lives of listeners in the Rochester and Finger Lakes regions. BobJohnsonAutoGroup.com.
This is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Email from David. He says, I'm very much in agreement with your guests. Learning where to find reliable information and how to use it to synthesize models of reality are far more important than learning how to do well in tests. The latter comes with the former, as long as those doing the testing are intelligent enough to design the test to measure that. As a retired scientist who still uses those skills in my day-to-day work in the nonprofit sector, I'm very aware of how important critical thinking is and how working well to understand something leads one to learn the basics by default. That's from David. So there's a thumbs up from Ed. Go ahead.
Of course. Ditto.
Listen to the scientists.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so they're going to co-sign on that one here. Now, here's a different perspective. Linda says she is for standardized testing. She says, I've been a teacher. I hold 7 teaching certifications, including, for example, social studies, English, students with disabilities, and literacy. I taught in the RCSD and at industry, and my kids and I attended local schools. Good teachers do not need to teach to the test. This is an excuse. It's a red herring. Most teachers are, quite frankly, not great teachers. Standardized tests indicate who is learning, who is making progress, and which teachers and which methods are effective or ineffective. Schools in the USA perform very poorly compared with most other modern industrialized countries. The school system in the USA needs to be significantly improved, and that does not mean getting rid of effective standardized measures of learning and effective versus ineffective teaching. The teachers' unions are a big part of the problem, along with poor, outdated, substandard standards in the United States. We need higher standards in this country. That is from Linda.
One comment back to Linda is that the results of the international testing that's been done for years, comparing countries throughout the world, has been pretty much debunked in the sense that if you were to disaggregate the data of those kids living in poverty from the United States and then compare it with other countries that only test certain populations that they have, we're in the top 3. So the comparison with other countries doesn't really hold water in terms of those particular tests. The other question is, what are we testing? Maybe students are showing that they learned very well in terms of memorization and regurgitation of the facts and the concepts that teachers are teaching. But that doesn't necessarily mean they are learning the skills that Tony Wagner cited in his work and his research.
Okay, anything you want to add, Ed?
We hear too often that the kids performed well on the test, but they still aren't reading, or they still don't know math. I'm appalled at the fact that kids don't know how the election process, voting process works. I'm surprised that financial literacy isn't part of anybody's curriculum. So there's a lot of gaps. I think multiple measures is really the focus again. Projects, portfolios, presentations, writing, collaborating, multiple teachers, mentors, along with formative testing along the way.
Michaela writes in to say, I have a question from the point of view of an elementary school teacher. I don't see grade inflation in the elementary level, but I see us pushing students through grade after grade until a point where they get to 3rd and 4th grade without being able to count past 20 or read simple words. Then they get through to 8th and beyond, so far behind that there's no way to catch them up anymore. My question is, we test regularly, formative and summative, but the scores and student work determine nothing and make no difference. Why do scores matter when they get to high school if they don't matter at all in elementary school? That's from Michaela.
So I wonder if Michaela is suggesting that those students who don't do well on the tests should be held back grades. And
I think that's the implication.
Yeah. And there's some research to show that, that she may be exactly right, that there are a number of kids who just aren't learning, and maybe teachers need to change their tactics, including that of what Ryan and DC are saying with autonomy, relatedness, and competence-based approaches to what they're doing. I think some of those factors are lost within the current mindset of some teachers. They're not focusing necessarily on building positive relationships with kids. So that kids, and Ryan and DC say this too, that if a kid believes that you really like them, that you appreciate who they are and their uniqueness, they will do almost anything for you in terms of engaging within the class if they believe that. And so how you treat kids is really important. And I'm not saying that this person who wrote into you is not saying that teachers don't generally like kids, but maybe it has to be a little different.
Okay, Ed, anything to add there?
Just that if you know students aren't making progress at the rate their peers are making, then you can do something about that before it's too late. and that means possibly a different method. Sometimes it's extra time. Sometimes it's one-on-one tutoring. And sometimes it's an extended school day, extended school year. So the students that I volunteer with at Rochester International Academy, another school, Nativity Prep, 5-8 school, private, but they don't pay tuition. It's all tuition free. Extended year, extended day, help these kids bridge the gap that they came in with. So there are other things to do than just wait until they've failed the test and now they're behind their peers. So remediation, meaning time, personal relationships along the way. And you only know that along the way if you're listening, watching, and working with a child.
Let's get Richard in Rochester on the phone next. Hey, Richard, go ahead.
Hi, I'm a retired teacher from the Rochester City School District, and in my career I had an opportunity to do a number of things, including teaching special education and supporting technology in a middle school and working at district level. And my problem with what we're calling standardized tests is, are you there? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't believe they're currently normed or reliable or valid. The tests that we're giving out of Albany, and I did a lot of work with testing, were very, very biased. And even the scoring of the tests 10 years ago was exceptionally biased.
What's an example of that?
Questions were about topics that not every child knew about. I forget the name of the comedian, but they questioned one of the people who they had an essay and they wanted to comment on it. Well, most of the kids in the schools I was teaching at had no clue as to who Dave Barry was. Yeah. And that's a matter of norming the test. The test should be normed to make sure that a wide population that matches the demographics of the country has equal knowledge of this stuff. And I'll argue with the people who are there, what difference does it make if you know about Dave Barry?
Okay.
Right. Yeah. I can remember another example of that was the mention in one question of the word yacht. And how many urban kids know what a yacht is? So there's, and in fact, there was one study done on college SATs and ACTs in which if a large number of black students answered the question positively and a large number of whites failed that question, the question was thrown out.
They took the question out.
Yeah. So I mean,
where was this?
That was a study that was done. I can't remember who did it, but I can find out on ACT and SATs.
And how the tests are constructed.
Yeah.
So let me just ask Richard. So anything you want to add before I let you go there, Richard?
Yeah, we did that on the 8th grade standardized tests. Another couple teachers and I reviewed all of our children's test scores and saw what questions the state eliminated from scoring. And it was the questions that the kids in our school got correct. And the tests questions that were accepted were presumably, I have no evidence of that, suburban kids' answers. The other thing is we don't use the tests for the purpose. The standardized test is supposed to give us an idea of where the child is so that we can adjust the processes for them. And the standardized test is not the be-all and end-all. But the other thing is when a child doesn't do well at a grade level, and we know they haven't, for, say, reading, we need to change the method the next year. Not necessarily leave them back, but take the information in to adjust the teaching method, maybe adjust the teacher. Standardized tests are not supposed to be evaluating teachers. They were never designed to. The standardized tests we're giving today are not standardized tests. They're just basically a test that's given to a number of kids, but it's not normed, not checked for reliability, not valid. And I had other things, but I know you're limited.
No, that's all right, Richard. You gave us a lot there. I appreciate the points on bias. And briefly, because I got to get two other things in before the hour's up. Whoosh, it's gone so quickly here. U.S. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona once said that tests can be a flashlight on what works in education. What Richard is saying is that is not how it works. Richard is saying is if you want to talk about tests as a flashlight, that's kind of what Ed was saying is if you test consistently all along, then you are using a flashlight and saying like, what do we uncover here? What's working? What's not? Richard is saying is these are used as kind of a weapon against either students or teachers and a kind of be-all, end-all, not as the, hey, let's help uncover problems and then let's individualize an approach here.
Yeah.
Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, and Richard described something I think that has changed over the time when I took Regents exams. The process was involving teachers, testing the questions, norming. I don't think the process is the same anymore because we've seen the questions.
Well, and the other thing that Richard talked about, I think, which is interesting, is that what he described in terms of a process of education is, again, teaching to the test. Mm-hmm. And in terms of that enlightenment is that we have to assume that what we're teaching to, as far as what the test reveals, is something that is necessary for kids to develop in terms of becoming, being great survivors and change agents in a complex technological society. If it's not, then we ought to be teaching about something else.
All right, so in our last 3 minutes here, I wanted to give, so I want Dan to just talk a little bit more about project-based assessment. And if you could, couple that to a response. Linda follows up to say, she says, as a teacher herself, there is nothing that stops any teacher from having portfolio assessments, project-based assessment, and incorporating student interests. Most teachers in schools do those things. The mantra of teaching to the test is a red herring in support of teachers who don't teach well, so they make the excuse of teaching to the test, which is an excuse for their poor performance. So what she's saying there is, any teacher who wants to do project-based assessment, portfolios, you can do that now already, and you can do it alongside standardized testing. Dan?
Well, a couple comments about that in project-based learning is that the assumption then is that if I want to include project-based learning, if I want to include student interests in what I'm teaching, I have the time and the freedom to do that, versus the teacher who says, I just don't know what the hell is going to be on this world history test. So I'm going to teach everything I can, make content a mile wide and an inch deep, but damn, these kids are going to know about the stuff so that they can pass the test. That's the issue. I agree it would be great if they could do what she's suggesting, but it makes it very difficult for teachers to feel like they have that flexibility and freedom when they are also going to be judged on how many of their kids do on the tests. Project-based learning with the New York State Performance Standards Consortium, rather than taking tests, Regents exams, kids do what they call PBATs, project-based assessment tasks. And this means simply that, for example, in social studies, a student might have to choose a in-depth research paper on a topic of his choice to hit on the areas of economics, politics, geography, and anthropology, perhaps, in terms of what they would deal with. And write the papers, submit it for review and feedback, and then have a meeting with a team of perhaps 3 or 4 experts, including 1 or 2 teachers from the school, to discuss that issue, get feedback. If it passes in terms of the expectations for that student, which is, again, an interesting question in terms of what is the level of the student in terms of their skill development and abilities. But the teachers who are there tend to be a bit more empathetic with whoever that student is and what they're capable of, what they're not, how much growth have they shown. So it's another issue involving performance-based testing in terms of subjectivity of the evaluators, either saying you've passed or you haven't passed, or you've done the best that you can right now. We don't think you could do much better, but this is as proficient as it's going to get. So that's an issue. And it's also an issue in terms of a student passing a high-stakes standardized test with a 65, when that score has also been adjusted because so many kids have not done well let's make the number of passing questions that they have to answer, let's make it at 20 as opposed to 50, which has been done in the past.
Well, so there's a lot more that will be said next Wednesday. 7 to 8:30 is the event.
Yes.
A virtual event that the Rochester Coalition for Public Education is running. They're bringing in 5 different people in the field, national names there. Dan Drmacich, Ed Donnelly from the coalition. I wish we had 2 hours with you. I'm glad to have one.
Likewise.
Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Evan.
More connections coming up.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.